been more than a century since British archaeologist Howard Carter laid eyes on an Egyptian treasure that had been sealed away for 3,000 years. The discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb was met with fascination the world over, and today, the ancient civilization continues to give up its secrets. The entrance to another tomb was discovered in 2022. It was originally thought to have belonged to the wife of a pharaoh. But then, Egyptologists found inscriptions, artwork, and alabaster jars with the name King Thutmose II, and it led them to conclude that this is the first royal tomb found since that of King Tut. It was likely during the 15th century BC that Thutmose II ruled for a short time. His mummy was discovered in the 19th century at another location where historians believed it was moved by grave robbers. And his tomb is not in good shape. Experts say it was likely flooded shortly after he died. But this discovery is another link in a chain that could lead to more answers about ancient Egypt and where its rulers and priceless relics came to rest. Record-breaking cold has descended on parts of the United States, and that's our next stop today on The World from A to Z. I'm Carl Azuz, happy to be sharing my Friday with the best audience ever. More than 100 million Americans, almost a third of the country, were huddled under a blast of winter weather Thursday. Parts of America that almost never feel sub-zero temperatures were feeling them, as some sources on social media and TV media blamed the polar vortex. This mass of cold air normally circulates around the North and South poles. Scientists say when the Arctic one expands during the winter, it can push frigid air south into the US, Europe, and Northern Asia. Not all researchers agree that an expanded polar vortex is responsible for what's happening in America right now. What is certain is that low temperature records that have stood for decades are being shattered. That happened from Nebraska to Texas Thursday, while places like coastal Virginia recently got 10 inches of snow, more in a day than it had ever recorded before. Some were out enjoying the winter wonderland, while authorities warned anyone who didn't need to travel to stay off the roads. Low temperatures were expected to remain over much of the country into the weekend.
Word of knowledge. In the early 1800s, British engineer Richard Trevithick developed what world-changing invention? Stethoscope, sewing machine, steam locomotive, soda fountain. The miner's son, who was skilled at problem solving, built the first steam locomotive between 1802 and 1804.
On this date in world history. All aboard! A British engineer and inventor named Richard Trevithick debuted the first working steam locomotive on February 21st. That was back in 1804, and it was a revolution in human transportation. But it wasn't the only invention to make headlines on this date. American inventor John Greenough received a patent for his sewing machine on February 21st, 1842. It wasn't the first machine like this ever, but it was the first that was patented in the United States. And on this date in 1972, U.S. President Richard Nixon arrived in China, becoming the first American leader to visit there since 1949 after China's Communist Revolution. His trip helped re-establish diplomatic relations between the two countries, though that relationship has been tested in more recent years by their growing rivalry. It made for a dramatically beautiful sight, an ongoing eruption on Italy's Mount Etna glowing red against its winter snow. But this has attracted a large number of tourists, some of them without guides, and authorities say they've been blocking rescue routes, risking injuries on the ice, and getting dangerously close to the lava. Authorities have described the crowds and the careless behavior as extremely dangerous.
Where in the world? The North Sea forms the western border of this European nation. Translated from Dutch, its official language, its name means low land or low country. The nation's capital is Amsterdam. Also known as Holland, the Netherlands is famous for its extensive canals and windmills.
The Dutch windmill, an iconic image, one that has inspired masters and a local painter. With over 100 images of windmills in her home, Pete Wessels is clearly a big fan of them. And now she's getting up close and personal to the mills. You might say imitating her art in life these days. Wessels is one of only a handful of women in the Netherlands tackling the arduous task of actually running a windmill.
Since 15 years I'm just painting, making my paintings on old windmill sailcloth from mills all over the Netherlands. And that actually made me curious about, okay, now I visit a lot of mills, I use the material for my art, but what would it be like if I would become a miller myself?
So she enrolled in a miller training program.
The traineeship is about 2 years. And you have to learn all about the mill, about the weather, about how to operate the mill, about how to fix things if things go wrong.
Windmills were first invented around AD 900. They've changed a lot over the years, but their importance to many farmers remained. The spinning sails provided power to grind grain or paint, extract oil, or draw up water from the ground. Polar mills were invented in the 1500s. They were, and in a modern design still are, crucial to the Netherlands. A good portion of the nation's land is below sea level. As much as 20% of it has been reclaimed from the sea. Now, dams keep much of the water at bay, but the sea is constantly trying to take the land back. Polar mills used a paddle wheel design until the 1800s, and then folks began to rely on the science of Archimedes' screw. The screw sits below the ground and twists, causing the curve of the screw to draw water uphill to be stored in canals. That keeps farmland dry and provides a steady source of water for crops. There are still about 1,000 functioning windmills in the Netherlands today. Wessels and millers like her wonder who will take over the task when they retire.
What we really try is to get the younger generation interested.
Finding a fully trained miller can be a struggle, but Wessels hopes it will help to promote courses like the one she's taking. And so far, she says the bid for young millers has been fairly successful in helping to keep the Netherlands' historic windmills turning.
Traveling from north to south along a western section of the U.S. today, we begin in Idaho, where the Spartans are with us from Mr. Anderson's class. Post Falls Middle School is in Post Falls, part of the Gem State of Idaho. Next stop is in the Beehive State of Utah. Fairfield Junior High School is there in Kaysville. Hello to Mr. LaFontaine's class, where the Falcons fly. And we're returning to the Grand Canyon State to welcome the Gifted and Talented Academy at Maryvale High School. Mrs. Shanahan's class is where the Panthers roam in Phoenix, Arizona. What day is it?
National Caregivers Day falls on the third Friday of February. That's the 21st this year, and the event honors the estimated 66 million Americans who help care for someone sick or disabled.
It seems a small stowaway recently traveled a large distance from its home in Central or South America to the northern U.S. state of New Hampshire. Found there in a shipment of bananas was none other than this guy, a cat-eyed snake. It is venomous. It's not supposed to be sold with bananas. That's not part of its appeal, if you know what I'm saying. Wildlife officials say the animal was healthy despite its trip, and they took it to a reptile rescue organization. What some would find very scary if they saw it had tarried upon a shipment or a tripment just for produce or dairy, but nary snakes. Shoppers wary would have more than a query, returning in a hurry, a flurry of fury or worry to carry back an animal that didn't want to attack. Right there, he's just bananas wondering if they're fruit or they're berries. Fridays are awesome. That's the world from A to Z. We hope you have a fruitful and safe weekend. I'm Carl Azuz, and you mean the world to me.